Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Radical Health. I'm your host, Seth, and today I have a special guest with me to talk about growing food. So we're going to get into the conversation. I think a lot of people want to hear more about how to produce some of the highest quality and tastiest, nutritious foods in their own backyard. And so my friend today, who's going to help us think about that and introduce new concepts and just discuss this concept of food forestry, growing plants, growing trees. I have with me Shelley. Welcome, Shelley.
Thanks so much for having me, Seth. It's awesome to be here.
You're so welcome, and thanks for being here. Now, you said you started growing plants in the temperate zone with a dream of growing fruit in the tropical climates. Where were you when you first started growing and gardening?
I started in my parents' backyard in Virginia, and I started with some raised beds. I broke down some pallets, made some raised beds, and got into it in my hometown. And yeah, that's where it all started. I was 17, long time ago.
What were you growing? Was it like the common summer annuals and things like that, vegetable crops, lettuces, or do you tell me what were you growing those first few years?
Yeah, I started with tomatoes and kale, your standard garden box veg.
Nice. And so now you're on the Coast of South Florida, is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
And can you tell me some of the crops, some of the food that you're growing where you're at now?
Yeah. So, well, in between Virginia and Florida was quite a bit, and I moved around a lot. Um, I fell in love with tropicals in Hawaii and wanted to make a career out of growing food. And so I finished school and I started, eventually was hired for farm management positions after working as a farmhand for long enough. And so that took me to Utah, Oregon, spent time in Hawaii. And once I kind of realized when I was managing a farm in Oregon that I wanted to impact change on more acres than just the farm I was on. Um, and I found the Regenerative Ag podcast by John Kempf when I was on that farm in Oregon, and it really deeply inspired me that change is possible and that these systems, natural systems, support this change. Like, we aren't going against the grain here. When we're working with nature, we can be more productive. Um, so I decided to finish school so that could help me to get to a place where I could impact change on more acres than just the farm I was managing. And came to Florida to grow tropicals. Basically got my mom and my husband to come with me, which is kind of crazy, but they did it and here we are.
Nice. I love that. So it sounds like you had noticed there was a problem or at least a divide between conventional growing methods and then natural growing methods because you mentioned this change. And are a lot of farmers still in the conventional method using synthetic fertilizers every year, sort of decimating the soil? Are a lot of farmers still on that like old paradigm?
Yeah, the organic like price markup is appealing and it does help farmers a lot to encourage them because it can be more expensive as a way to manage a farm, budget per acre. It can be more expensive. It doesn't have to be, but crop management is so nuanced, and even when you look at conventional ag, there are conventional inputs that aren't organic certified, but they aren't necessarily bad for the soil or bad for soil microorganisms. They can be used in a positive way, and I don't think they're harmful. Like, you don't have to have an organic certified product to have a high quality um, yield or a nutrient dense yield and to still support healthy soils. So there's a lot of nuance, but yeah, generally like conventional farming is the norm. But I mean, I started buying organic produce in 2011 probably, and it was hard to find stuff. Like I remember just not finding the kind of produce and food items that I was looking for, and I kind of watched this market grow over the years and the availability grow, and it's really exploded. So I think the market's grown substantially for organic grown produce.
That's a good message to hear, actually, because I hear a lot of people talking about how the organic certification is a little bit of a scam because there's a, in my opinion, a lack of transparency. It's hard for me to tell, well, what was it sprayed with, and what are the certified organic, applications that could still be potentially harmful. For me, it's a lot of lack of transparency. It's hard for me to tell if this organic orange is any different than this non-organic orange. As a consumer, it can be tough, but I'm glad hearing from somebody in the industry that it's actually incentivizing farmers to improve their methods and actually remove, uh, certain applications that are not going to qualify as organic. So that's good. Now, we hear a number of different phrases of types of farming, like organic farming, regenerative farming, syntropic farming. Um, can you tell me? Let's zoom in on the term regenerative agriculture because that's one that I think you've embraced. What are the tenets of regenerative agriculture? What makes it regenerative? What do we have to do to stay within that ethos?
It's a really great question, and I think the word has really taken off in the last few years. So a lot of people define it differently, and I think that's kind of warranted, right? Because every farm is so different, every context is so different. So a regenerative practice on one farm might not be applicable to another farm. But there are two kind of different schools of thought where one is more focused on just cover cropping and building organic matter, incorporating animals, no till. So, really like focusing on the soil structure, not increasing compaction, not destroying soil structure with cultivation. Um, and then the other school of thought, which, I think both are equally important. And it's really good to know what your options are when you want to go regenerative. These are just tools in a toolkit, right? But some groups focus more on one set of tools than the other. So the other set of tools that I focus on in my work is plant nutrition and soil biology and the roles that they both play in supporting crop health and high yield and yield quality. Um, and I think that that is a piece that I don't see a ton of in the kind of mainstream regenerative ag conversation, which, you could argue that conversation is the Regenerative Ag podcast by John Kemp. That is the mainstream conversation as well. And that is his set of principles that he's really promoted over the years. So it really just comes down to using tools that increase soil health, that build soil instead of degrade soil while you're growing a crop, that is nutrient dense, and while you're growing a crop that is so healthy it's not getting attacked by diseases or insects. So it's really about promoting the health of the crop and the soil without needing to protect it with chemical like pesticides and herbicides.
I got to underline what you just said about soil being so healthy that pests won't want to attack the crop. I heard this years and years ago that the best deterrent for pests is just to have a healthy plant. And you do that through soil science. And that if a plant is like 100% healthy, its leaves and its plant will be so turgid and so strong that bugs literally can't eat it. It's like too it's like too raw for them. It's not broken down enough. It's not weak enough for the bugs to actually go and get it. It sounds like it is, but is this true? Do we just have to strengthen the health of the plant in order for it not to get attacked by pests?
Yeah. Yeah, there's three different ways of looking at it. One is exactly what you said, a thicker leaf cuticle. And the way a leaf grows a thicker leaf cuticle and gets that, well, the waxy sheen's another piece, but the thicker the leaf, the less weak it is and able it is to be chewed down on by insects. That's one part. Another part is using nutrients to change the quality of the sap. So the sap in the plant is like human blood. Like our blood is like the plant sap. And so the quality of the sap could either attract the pest and say, hey, I have this nitrate or this ammonium in my sap, and this is an ideal food source for you. Come get it. And then the insect can see it and comes and eats that sap. If you have complete protein synthesis, then that nitrate and ammonium is getting turned into longer chains and complete proteins, which are not digestible to these insects. Um, so that's another way, is making the sap not attractive to the insects. And then another way is when you have the plant nutrition that's being taken up is in the form of metabolites. So the plant doesn't actually have to put effort into changing things into a usable form. It takes it up in a usable form because it's a microbial metabolite in the soil. And so like when a plant's converting nitrogen into protein, it's exerting a lot of energy, it's using up more water. But when it's taking up amino acids and proteins from the soil, then it's able to save that water and save that energy. And that saved energy goes into the form of lipids and fats, and it forms a waxy cuticle on the leaf, and then it has immune system pathways that are triggered by that increased energy storage. There's many different ways that the plant becomes so healthy that the insects and diseases aren't attracted to it. It's like it's a whole universe. It's incredible to learn about. And I just started learning about this the last couple of years, but it is like the coolest thing.
That's so amazing. I think it's also applicable to our human bodies that the healthier we are, the less susceptible we are to disease just because we're so much more vital. And pests, whether it's like lice, I'm just thinking of an actual bug that can come and feast on our body. Lice likes scalps that are, shedding lots of broken down, like weak genetic material. But if you're so strong that you're not shedding that type of skin, the lice won't be attracted to you. So I think we can even apply that same principle to our own health. So let's talk more about soil, because that seems to be the key. I've heard farmers say that they're dirt farmers, that they actually are in the business of growing the dirt, and that's what benefits the crops. So in my mind, I see building soil can be done a number of ways, primarily through biomass, like plant matter, and also through manure, like horse, human, vermicompost, worm castings. So you get like the animal and the plant material broken down can turn into some great compost. Do you recommend that people use animal fertilizers, or can we get all of our soil built from plants alone?
I don't think you need animal fertilizers, but they are, I mean, I use them. We have horses at our farm. When we got our farm, there was a horse boarding operation there already, and they stayed. And it's been really awesome to just have piles of manure to have access to. Um, but there's a lot of like you mentioned, syntropic farms, agroforestry farms that don't integrate animals, and they build soil just with plants alone, with the root exudates, with the biomass that they cut. um, and there's a lot of microbes like that are living in plants and that are in the seeds, and when the seed germinates, it introduces this microbiome that was inside the seed to the soil. So I think building soils with plants and microbes, and the soil has its parent material has minerals and nutrients in it, um, and that's what you're unlocking when you build that soil biology, is they're able to use acids to break those nutrients down off of the parent material and then make that bioavailable to the crop. Um, Animals make it quick. They're like a quick composting machine, you know? So it really depends on your system, your goals. But yeah, I think it's definitely possible without manure.
Awesome. I love your responses, by the way. It's like a healthy amount of technical information that I'm a little new to. So it'll be nice to listen back and study some of the things you're saying. I've never thought about the microbiome of a seed, for example. It's uh, that's very interesting. I like that. And there is so much diversity in plants. Now I see, speaking of building soil with plants, I see you like to grow a certain type of grass and then chop it and drop it. And is that vetiver or what's the type of grass? One of the common ones that you use in your food forest in Florida.
Yeah, vetiver is definitely my favorite and the one I'm planting. I'm planting more of it every couple weeks. I'm doing more. It takes a while to plant the hedge, but eventually all your beds have hedges and you're good. You just have to cut it.
And so how long do you let it grow before you chop it down?
Oh, I've not been great about keeping up with a schedule, but that's also part of why I love vetiver is that it tolerates me not keeping up with a great schedule. There's some things that you can grow that can get really overgrown and unmanageable if you don't stay on top of them, but vetiver is not one. And so I find it to be the most convenient one to grow. But you could get, I would say 4 or 5 cuts a year easy of a large clump that has regrown a lot of biomass.
Cool. And the benefit of that, of cutting your grass and then laying it right back down in the garden beds is one, it blocks the sun, so it prevents weeds from growing. So it's like a mulch in that sense. It's also like a mulch in that it'll break down and provide the soil with micronutrients and also carbon and nitrogen, right? So what are the other benefits of chopping and dropping, I guess, besides weed suppression and then feeding the soil, or are those the main two?
Yeah, that's the main my main goal is to build soil carbon, like you mentioned. Our soil is it just looks like sand, right? On this side of the state, it's very sandy. I haven't really checked out the soils in Homestead, but I've heard that they're pretty intense and rocky. But over here, it's like farming on the beach. So carbon beach sand is very low CEC. And when you think of CEC, just I would think of like the static, I don't know, just the energetic charge of like a large particle versus a really tiny little particle. And so this clay particle, for example, is so small that it's able to hold on to nutrients. But the sand is so big, each grain of sand is so big, there's no charge really. And you have what you would call a very low CEC. And the way you can get past that is with organic matter and soil carbon because that actually has a super high CEC. And so you now can get the effect of clay or even greater because organic matter has a much higher CEC than clay soil. And you can get that effect of holding nutrients and moisture in the soil when you use organic matter. So I'm very focused on growing as much carbon as I can. Um, but you need to balance that out too because that carbon can uh, temporarily immobilize nitrogen in the soil while it's breaking down. But yeah, building soil carbon is probably my number one. And then the hedge actually kind of acts like a wall. So sometimes you'll see weeds like encroaching, like they're trying to get in and they can't get past the wall. So, like a spreading, like a crawling grass couldn't get past it. And it shades it too. So it's not just like a physical barrier where if a seed blows or a weed's trying to get in, it's blocked physically, but it's also creating this dense shade And so that also discourages any growth from things that weren't planted there or wanted there originally. So that's a very cool function of it. And then vetiver has a super deep root system. And so it's able to reach the water table during the dry season. And it's also flood tolerant and drought tolerant, which is kind of rare. There's other things I've used that are kind of drought tolerant, but they're not flood tolerant. They'll die as soon as they're sitting in water, and we have both. So we'll get flooding, and then we'll get drought, and the vetiver takes it both like a champ. So there's like so many features of vetiver that I'm excited about.
Yeah, that sounds great. I love how it has a deep root system too, because that establishes the plant and that can enrich the microbiome and like the just the total ecosystem of that area so much the deeper it goes. Thank you for explaining those benefits. Now, do you
Absolutely.
know will vetiver grow anywhere in the United States, or is it more a warmer weather grass?
Yeah, I forget which zone exactly is the cutoff, but it's probably somewhere around zone 10.
Okay, so that's like South Florida.
It's definitely a warmer climate grass. Yeah, and I've been trying to figure out a temperate climate clumping grass that is perennial. There's lots of options for annual cover crops. Like sorghum Sudan grass is a great one, but I haven't I haven't found. I know there's people out there who probably know what to use, and I think I talked to someone who said someone from NRCS. I think they said that there was a university studying Eastern Gamma grass. I think that might have been a perennial that they were looking into. I have to I have to check back into that, but perennial clumping grass in cooler climates is something I'd really like to learn more about.
Right on. So yeah, if you can, people, you got your garden, get your grass hedges in there for all the benefits we just outlined, and it's a way to build the soil. You chop it and you drop it, and then that stuff just breaks down and it becomes dirt. So in a place like Homestead, where you alluded to the fact that we have very rocky soil, Shelley, it's basically like we don't even have soil. We just have this big rock of it's called coral. It's like a limestone rock that we're sitting on top of that's super flat, and right under it is the water table. So we do have to build our own soil. We either have to get soil brought in or we have to get mulch brought in, let that all break down, and constantly build our soil, constantly grow cover crops and chop and drop plants so that we can turn it all back into dirt. So, the chipper is our good friend out here. And we'll use like not just grasses, but Mexican sunflower and moringa, like just different things that grow fast that produce a lot of biomass for chop and drop. Even ice cream bean, which is a fruit tree, but it grows so fast that you can use it as a chop and drop plant, and you can also have other ice cream bean trees that are used for fruit. So I want to talk about fruit, but before we get there, I have another question on soil. So you work at Advancing Eco Ag, which is John Kemp's company, and you said that you develop nutrition programs, like crop nutrition programs.
Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? How do you supply nutrition to plants? Besides we just talked about manure and cover crops, but what other techniques do you have, and what are your main techniques when you go into a crop nutrition program?
Yeah, we like to start off with testing. So we check out irrigation water tests, soil sample tests, and we usually we will prioritize SAP testing. That helps us to make in-season decisions that basically get to the root of the problem before it can become a problem. So the SAP test, like we were talking about, plant sap is like our blood. It'll tell you what the nutrient levels are. And we'll get both a young leaf sample and an older leaf sample because nutrients in plants are mobile. So we want to know both the immobile levels and the mobile nutrient levels. So we'll do sap tests depending on the crop, maybe like 3 times a year for something like wheat, or once a month for something like fruit trees. and we will watch those levels and determine if we need to put out a foliar or a fertigation to impact those levels as the flesh is coming out or as it's flowering or it's just put on fruit and there's cell division happening. We want to support all those different phases of the crop production with the nutrients that are relevant at that point in time.
Okay, and quick interjection, just for people who are listening who might not know, um, foliar feed is to spray the leaves with a solution, and fertigation is like a irrigation of water with fertilizer mixed in, right?
Yep.
Cool. So just want to get those out there in case people weren't sure of those terms, and so it's very dependent on the crop and the season and the farm. What are some examples of nutrients that you might supply? I mean, like anything from iron to fish emulsion. Like, what are some of the top nutrients that you end up adding to irrigation or
Yeah.
foliar spray?
We end up watching calcium a lot. At least in my experience in Florida, there's good calcium in the soil, but calcium uptake is not easy. It can be tricky to get the plant to take calcium up. So we do watch calcium, and calcium's a big part of leaf integrity, leaf sizing, cell division in fruits, and you want there's a brief period of cell division with when the tree puts on fruit or the vegetable, um, and in that period you are limited on how many cells divide based on how much calcium the plant has. So the more cells it has, the better structure it will have, and the less likely it is to crack. Or like if you see an eggplant with webbing on it, it probably didn't have enough calcium. So getting calcium in during that period is really important for the yield quality and also for leaf flush. So that's a huge focus area.
Cool. It's interesting that you mentioned calcium uptake is an issue because it's not just a matter of dosing a plant with calcium. What are the other variables involved that if the plant requires to uptake the calcium, maybe it's magnesium, maybe it's zinc, some other elements that are part of the holistic picture, right? It's never just one, oh, you're missing calcium, throw them some calcium and it's going to get better. It's like a holistic system. And we're looking
Mm-hmm.
at pretty much every element in the system. And from my understanding, calcium is an alkaline mineral. Some trees like it a little more alkaline, some trees like it a little more acidic. What I've noticed is that in Homestead, our soil is very alkaline. It has a lot of calcium because of that coral limestone underneath us. And we have to actually amend our soil to be more on the acidic side to be friendlier to the mangoes. So that's really interesting about the calcium uptake. What other data do you gather from these farms in order to help you make a decision for how to feed the plants?
It's of most importance to know the grower, what their goals are, what their needs are, what resources they have, what they want to do, what they're willing to do, and what their comfort level is with changing different things. And I think it's very good to be conservative with making changes because it's very challenging for a farmer to, um, their crop is they can have a bad year any year. Like it's already very risky to farm. So doing something different is even riskier, right? So I think it really just comes down to the individual person and their site and their goals. And it's just a highly individualized process.
Okay, that's good. Everything should be pretty individualized when it comes to diagnosis and how to move forward. We got to look at what are your goals. And so I'm actually curious in your personal food forest, which you keep mostly for a hobby, is what you told me. Um, what are your goals for your land and for your growing on a personal level?
It's evolved. It's evolved a bit. When I first got there, I had just spent so many years wanting to grow tropical fruit, but being in a temperate place growing vegetables as a career. And I had been dreaming of the day that I could grow tropical fruit, and I didn't think it would be possible. I just didn't really think I'd ever get there. But we made it happen, and I I really just wanted to grow all my favorite fruits. And I wanted to be able to grow them the way I wanted to grow them so that I could control the quality and the ripeness. Because I've been disappointed over the years with quality coming from grocery stores. It can be hit or miss, in the produce section. So I just wanted to be able to grow my own and to know that the nutrient integrity was there. And I also wanted to be able to prove out different concepts and like create a living example. And so over the years, there's quite a learning curve for me getting into fruit trees because vegetables and fruit trees are very different. And I'd been in different climates, different soils. So it was kind of like starting all over again. And so, basically I felt like a beginner when I started, and beginners have a hard time proving out complex concepts. So this whole time, like I've really been getting over this learning curve of learning how to grow fruit trees, how to grow in sand, growing in a place that has wet, dry seasons, flooding, um, and just, the site itself, the specifics of my site. So it's really, I didn't know it, but it was really just learning how to grow fruits and how to grow trees. Um, and now that I've been using agroforestry practices and combined with my experience talking to farmers, seeing what the challenges are, and seeing how organic matter and soil carbon could help them, now one of my main focuses is how do we take these practices and apply them to scale? How and I think a great way for me to figure that out is by doing it by myself on the weekend. Because when you only have like one day a week, because I need to chill out on Sunday. But when you just have like a very limited time span to manage something, you're forced to figure out more efficient, faster ways to do things. And so I'm trying to learn by doing and scale this system that grows organic matter in place, that builds soil in place, and just figure out like how do we replicate this for farmers who are growing on 200 acres or 1,000 acres? Like, is that possible? And how is it possible? So I'm trying to basically do a little experiment farm right now.
I love that. That's a great answer. And I love that you're thinking about how to scale it up because we do find the highest quality stuff generally with small farms. There's just more control over each tree. It's easier to harvest if you're dealing with a smaller amount, smaller space, um, and you don't have to apply these industrial practices to cover like many acres if you're dealing with, especially with one crop, monocrops. That I just find the quality increase as the size of the farms go down, and so it's nice that you're studying how that works on a small scale. Want to scale it up, so I can't wait for the day where we have regenerative fruits in the supermarket. That would be amazing instead of just
We do
monoculture.
now, actually.
Tell me about that. Where do you find them?
You know what's weird? It's strange. Um, I know at least of one or two. Actually, no, there's a few. I can't name them, but there are large fruit growing companies that work with our team, and they don't have a regenerative label on their produce. They just work with our team because we're able to give them precise crop nutrition programs that work for their business goals and for their yield goals. So there are some farms that are putting regenerative or some kind of regenerative, high quality produce on the shelves. They're just not identified. And I hope that soon we can um, find a way to, because there's a weird middle place where like someone maybe isn't organic, but like I was saying earlier, there's so much nuance with conventional practices and products that they're not necessarily, I mean, our products are organic, but there's other conventional products that aren't necessarily bad. They're just not organic certified. And so they don't qualify. And so, I buy organic stuff because I do appreciate the program, and it is a pretty stringent program. But there's so much nuance where you could be buying something conventional and they could be using some organic products, some good soil building practices. They just don't have the label.
Right, right. Yeah, some of the best produce I've ever had was not certified organic,
Right,
because they just
exactly.
either couldn't afford the label, or didn't want to, or didn't need to. If your market trusts your farm and your food, why would you ever pay for an extra certified thing if you didn't have to? Um, but that's good to know that people are moving in the direction of regenerative. And honestly, I think we're going to be forced to. I think the way nature works is, when we work against her for so long, it catches up to us. So when we try to plant foods or these crops in monocultures year after year after year, and we're not diversifying the soil, not diversifying the environment, we're going to see failure. We're going to see disease. And I think we've been seeing that with the Florida citrus industry in the last 60 years, um, because it was once a very booming industrious state, Florida, for oranges. And it's not anymore. I mean, the mangrove grove is going down. The government's chopping down all these trees in people's houses because of the blight, or the greening disease, excuse me. But I do see citrus trees coming back in smaller spaces, in forests underneath the oak trees, or in people's gardens. Um, I want to hear what you think about citrus and its place in Florida. And are we going to see a comeback, or what is the state of citrus growing right now? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and with citrus, I feel like I at this point I know just enough about citrus to know that I don't truly know. Like citrus is incredibly fascinating. The history of citrus, the way the industry's gone. I've talked to a lot of farmers. I've worked on trials on farms. I'm growing it myself now. I'm growing variety, like I'm growing Valencias, which are suffering greatly from HLB. That's like a common juice orange variety, and I'm very perplexed by citrus. One really good episode of, I mean, all the episodes are amazing, but one of my favorites of John's podcast is with Benny McLean, from the McLean family. They started the brand Uncle Matt's Orange Juice, and they grow organic oranges. And that episode is incredible because Benny's dad was a citrus grower in the early 1900s, and he remembers the practices his dad did and the way his dad thought about growing citrus, just his overall philosophy as a grower, and how his dad received all these changes because like his dad was a regenerative citrus grower in the early 1900s. Like it was regenerative. They were cover cropping, and they didn't have herbicides. They didn't have pesticides. They didn't have all this stuff. Um, and so, yeah, I would recommend that episode to anyone who wants to learn what's going on with citrus. It is really crazy, and it's
And the
awful.
name of the podcast, sorry to cut you
It's
off. The
the
name of the
Regenerative Agriculture Podcast, and it's the episode with Benny McLean. Yeah, so I am a student of citrus and of these citrus growers who I get the privilege of working with and talking to. But yeah, the trees are suffering so much, and that disease affects water and nutrient mobility because it's clogging the phloem in the trees, their veins basically. And you can see it. You can see these branches die off, and it's just not getting water and nutrients because of the disease. But the principles that we work on are if you support the plant with complete nutrition and healthy soils, and you're not putting things on the soil that actually could lock up nutrients or could kill microorganisms, and you're keeping that environment healthy and welcoming for the roots, then the tree should thrive. And it's going to be very interesting for me to keep growing citrus and using these principles. So far, I have some trees. I recently transitioned from fully non-irrigated to irrigating, and I'm slowly rolling out irrigation. Um, but I have some trees that have really big leaves on them. I'm purposefully leaving them unprotected. I actually bought the little tree tents, the little ghosts. I don't know if you've seen the little ghost tents. They're called IPCs. I bought some to protect my trees, and then I decided not to put them out just because I want to put these principles into practice and not protect the trees. So we'll see. I'll keep you updated. I'll post on Instagram how things are going. But we did have an amazing first year of our trial with regenerative grapefruit, and these are older trees. They're somewhere around 20 years old. So we're seeing a lot of promising things with regenerative practices in citrus. I can't say anything like conclusive, right? Because this is probably one of the biggest issues in agriculture, like
Right.
the citrus industry. It's happening everywhere. It's not just Florida, right? It's in
Mm,
Brazil, California. Um,
wow.
but yeah, I'm really excited to be putting these principles into practice with citrus. I think if you can prove this out on citrus, it's yeah, you can do it anywhere on anything.
Well, that would be a game changer too if we had a proof of concept of how to sustainably grow oranges without getting the greening disease. Because once upon a time, Florida was like the orange mecca. I've just read about the entire Indian River was just like lined with orange trees, and many rivers and canals and communities are just orange trees everywhere. And I would like to see it return because now we're buying oranges in the winter in Florida, and they're coming from California, they're coming from South Africa, and it doesn't have to be like that. So I think we're in an interesting time right now with agriculture, seeing some of the negative effects of what we've been doing industrially the last 100 years. And it's like, all right, time to get back to basics, time to get back to nature and just soil health. So now let's say a hobbyist, a non-professional food forester, someone who just wants to start growing food in their house. How should they approach it? Specifically, I'm thinking about diversity. So I'm thinking about, let's say someone's got a decent yard. Are they going to be wanting to do herbs and greens and fruit trees and annuals and some vegetables? I guess it's going to depend on their goals and like what they want. But would you recommend maybe starting small, putting a couple things out there, or is there benefit in getting more and getting like lots of diversity in your garden?
Oh, um, I think probably more diversity. I mean, the faster you jump in, the quicker you get your learning curves over with, right? So if you try a bunch of stuff at once, but you can also create a mess for yourself to deal with later on.
Right.
So I think there's a good balance between trying a lot of things at once, but approaching it like doing your homework first, talking to people first, seeing other people's places first, what they're doing, and picking and choosing what you like from those examples and doing it at your place. And a good balance between things that you like and things that are easy to grow. Because I just wanted to plant soursop when I got here, and I didn't want to plant any bananas. I was like, bananas are fine, but I want soursop. Well, after the first freeze, all my soursop died, and all I had left was bananas. And they're beautiful. Like I love growing bananas now, and they're amazing. They're great, and smoothies, dehydrated. You can cook them like potatoes. So I think there's a good balance between grow what you like, but also like open your mind up to those things that are very easy to grow, low barrier to entry, and you can learn to love them and learn all the different ways that you can eat them and prepare them. Um, so yeah, I think diversity and then just keeping an open mind to new things, especially things that are easier to grow here.
That's good. And so, yeah, in South Florida, bananas are very easy to grow, and they should be one of the first things people put in, I think, because they're also going to give you food pretty quickly, less than a year ish. Same with papayas; they grow pretty fast. But the only thing is that not everyone listening to this is going to be able to do that. Um, but Shelley's still right, and you still have a point where it comes to plant a little extra because in case one thing dies, you'll still have some other things. So don't plant your entire yard with whatever green beans because you just something might happen. It might not be a good year. They might not set fruit.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would also recommend diversity. But also what you said about visiting farms, coming up with your little Pinterest board or whatever, and like talking to people in your area, knowing what does well is huge. It's probably going to save you years of headache if you do your homework first. So that's a great tip. Thank you for that one. Okay, so yeah, soursop. That is a hard one to grow even in South Florida, um, from what I understand. Do you grow any other anonas like like charamoya?
Yeah, I have Rollinia. I have new sour sops now, thanks to my friend who planted some. Um, what other nut? We've direct seeded red custard apple, but it's hard to tell. The beds, the ones they've been unirrigated for 2 years, so I think it's very hard for a tree to establish in the first few years when we have such a long dry season. But I'm new to the dry farming, non irrigated whole way of growing, and it's been really interesting to learn how things perform. But when I plant, I'm going to plant more anonas. I'm going to be establishing them the first few years with supplemental water.
Nice. Yeah, nonas are huge. Where I was staying, my friend's got a farm and he has tons of ilamas, which are sort of a rare anona. People know about the atamoya, the charamoya, the sugar apple, and the soursop, and even the pawpaw, the American anona. But the ilama is a rare one. I don't even think I've ever seen one of those fruits, but he's got a lot of those trees, and we're trying to keep them alive. Um, the pawpaw, though, I was just in Kentucky, and that's like pawpaw land, and obviously it's not the season, so I couldn't really identify any of the trees. I think the leaves are still growing, but that's an annona that if anyone does not know about the pawpaw, please, please, please look it up. If you live in the anywhere in the eastern half of the United States, all the way up to Massachusetts and Maine, I'm pretty sure pawpaw grows. Um, and it's like a custardy tropical banana pineapple type fruit that grows in North America. Mostly it's foraged because it's not grown commercially and it's hardly ever sold in the market. You kind of have to go and forage it. That's a special one, the pawpaw.
I've never tried it, but I've wanted to try it for so many years, and I've never had the opportunity. There's a pawpaw festival Michael Judd hosts. I see him post like flyers for it, and I've always wanted to go. But it's in Maryland. I don't know
Yep,
when.
Maryland along the Potomac River is a very common place for pawpaws to grow.
Nice.
Maryland, Kentucky, Ohio, they're really concentrated there, especially. And I would love to go to a pawpaw fest this year. But now, Shelley, another very magical, special fruit to this planet that doesn't grow well in South Florida, although I've heard some people growing it in Homestead, and that would be durian. And you recently hosted a durian party in Fort Myers, and I have some friends that went to it. It looked really fun. I want to know what made you want to throw that gathering, and how did it go?
Oh, it was so amazing. Well, I went on the host of the event who brought it to our farm, Lindsay. I went on her durian tour last year in Thailand, And she just reached out and said she was hosting events in the US and asked if I knew of some venues. And I was like, well, you could have it at our farm. We're equipped to host people. So we did it together and it was just amazing. It was so fun. And a lot of people came. I think it was like almost 50 people. This is a big event.
And so they had durian shipped from Southeast Asia.
Yep.
Like, how many varieties did you guys try?
Oh my gosh. It must have been, oh goodness. I should remember. It was I definitely at least 20 or 25. It could have been more than 30. There were a lot. She brought a lot of different varieties.
And what's her company's name again?
Year of the Durian.
That's right, Year of the Durian.
Durian. Yeah, you can order durian from her website. You can book a tour and go tour in Thailand or Malaysia. She has different tours and she has a blog. It's what she's done is incredible. I'm just in awe of her work.
Nice. Well, it's nice that you brought some of the South Florida community together to enjoy this rare fruit. And well, it's not even so rare in Southeast Asia. It's kind of everywhere during the season. But for us here in America, I didn't even hear about it until a couple of years ago. And it is a truly magical, special fruit. It's if you ask people what it tastes like, they'll say anything from whiskey to garlic to gasoline to bananas. Like all those words kind of fairly describe the flavor of it. It's so complex and it's sweet, but it's savory. It's a wild fruit, and that's cool that you brought it here. You think you'll be doing any other events like that coming up or down the road?
Yeah, I'd love to do another durian event someday. If Lindsay wants to do another one, I'd love to. I've been thinking like it would be so cool just to order a bunch of fruit together, like as a group of people, and just have a fruit lup. Order a bunch of durian, some llamas or red custard apples, but I haven't really been able to prioritize that. But I love hosting people. I used to have a growers gathering. I had one 2 or 3 winters in a row in December. So this past December, instead of doing the growers gathering, we just did the durian dinner because it takes a lot of energy and prep to get ready for an event, and then after the event. So I couldn't do 2 this year, but I will probably do another growers gathering at some point. Um, it's so fun to get together with people who love fruit and love growing, and especially like people who are growing in Florida. We're all growing roughly the same stuff, or they're growing something I haven't heard of, and we get to exchange cuttings or seeds. It's super fun. I love the Florida grower community.
Yeah, me too. And that's where we met. I met you a couple of years ago at Jacob's Farm in Punta Gorda, and just meeting everyone there who's like sort of younger and about this life and really trying to just put their energy into the land and reap the benefits, live closer to nature. I found that these people have such a good head on their shoulders. They're not all freaked out about, anything that you could be freaked out about in society. A lot of the Florida growers are just, I'm just doing my thing, and just kind of focused on what we can control, which is our yards, to a certain extent. Sometimes it feels like they can get out of control, but yeah. And if you host any more gatherings like that, I'd definitely be keen to hang out and meet people.
Awesome. I'll let you know when something's in the works. Be great to have you out.
Beautiful. Um, Now we talked about the oranges and the grapefruit, durian, some of the anonas. Are there any other fruits that you're excited about, either that you're growing or not, that just have some element of promise or particular deliciousness for you?
I love loquats. They're
Oh my God.
so bright. Like they're just incredible.
And loquats you can grow over the entire state of Florida,
Right,
not just South Florida.
right. Um, I have some mystery trees that I bought from a friend a few years ago. I haven't talked to her in a while, but I don't know. They might be seedling trees because I think each tree tastes a little different. Um, but one of them's like spectacular. Like it's just incredible, and they're all very good. But yeah, loquats for sure. I'm trying to grow jackfruit. We'll see what happens. I love jackfruit so much, and I really hope I can make it work. But we'll find out.
Well, jackfruit is one of the highest yielding fruits of any other fruit. Like the amount of weight that can come off a tree in one season is pretty staggering. It can be like hundreds of pounds. And the tree doesn't even have to be that big. Sometimes you see these little skinny branches holding up these like monstrous jackfruits. So it is a quite remarkable plant. I also love loquats. We just left loquat season, and the first apartment that I lived in New Orleans, Louisiana, had a loquat tree in the backyard, and I didn't even know what it was. I'm like, what are these little apricot things? And that they're delicious, and they seem to produce a lot. And I also really love loquats. Shelley, I love your passion for plants, and let's tell people where they can find you. So Instagram.com/Shelley Plants is one place. Where else can they find you or the company that you work with?
Yeah, well, our company also has an Instagram, Advancing Eco Agriculture. We have a website. And yeah, you can reach out to me. I'm Shelley Plants on Instagram, and I work with farmers who are looking to basically use nutrition and biology to answer some of the issues they might be facing, whether it's disease or insects or yield quality or increasing yield or reducing their fertilizer and chemical control budget. There's a lot that you can do with nutrition. It's so exciting what you can do with good nutrition and good quality bioavailable nutrition, which is what our company also manufactures. So definitely recommend checking out our website and checking out our products and different grower guides. And yeah.
Do you have grower guides for like a very small scale home garden, or do you guys work primarily with larger scale farms?
So the farm services team has team members who work more closely with smaller, market gardens and smaller, maybe backyard growers. So they answer the phone all day, every day. Like they're talking to growers from all over of all kinds all the time, and it's awesome. Like to hear what people are doing, and so many people are growing in their sites, and they're not farmers. They're just growing, and they're learning how to use these tools, and it's super fun. So yeah, we have team members who will work with smaller growers. I usually work with commercial farms, though.
Right on. All right. So advancing eco agriculture. If you guys want to know more about how to bolster your nutrition program for your crops, and Shelley Plants, if you want to keep up with her and see what she's doing with her personal food forest. And again, I just thank you very much for being here and sharing your experience, your knowledge, and some of your projects. So thank you again, Shelley.
Thanks so much for having me, Seth. It was so much fun.
Right on. And we're gonna talk soon, and hopefully I'll see you at a growers gathering in the future.
Awesome. Sounds great.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.